My name is Sarah Taylor, and what I'm about to share may sound unbelievable, but it happened. I was a 34-year-old doctor when everything changed midair. One moment I was reviewing patient charts on my tablet, and the next I was crossing into a realm no human words can fully describe. I met Jesus there, not as an idea, but as living light. He showed me things about humanity, about unity, and something extraordinary about Barack Obama in the year 2026. What I saw wasn't political, it was prophetic, filled with love and purpose. Listen closely and subscribe for more experiences like this. It was an early spring morning, one of those days where the sky feels too calm, almost watchful. My colleagues and I were preparing for a short domestic flight from Chicago to San Francisco. I remember joking with a colleague, "This will be a quiet flight, just how I like it." She laughed. "Careful, Sarah, you just jinxed us." But deep down, something felt unusual. While walking toward the galley, I felt a strange pressure in my chest. Not pain, just heaviness, like the air was thicker than normal. I brushed it off, blaming the altitude and the stress of my residency. Halfway through the flight, we hit unexpected turbulence. The passengers were calm, but I noticed the sky outside looked different, darker in patches, even though it was still morning. As I reached for my bag in the overhead compartment, a sudden dizziness overtook me. My vision began to swirl. I tried to steady myself, but everything inside me shifted, as if my heartbeat no longer belonged to gravity. "Sarah, are you okay?" someone asked. I tried to answer, but my voice faded. The tablet in my hand dropped, then silence. Later, they told me I collapsed mid-aisle, unresponsive, pulse faint. A nurse on board began chest compressions, calling for help, but I wasn't there anymore. I felt myself lift, literally lift, out of the scene. I could see the passengers' shocked faces, my own body lying still, the captain's voice echoing from the cockpit. Yet I felt no fear, only awareness. The plane around me seemed suspended in time. Every vibration, every sound slowed until all I heard was one word whispered through the air: peace. And then everything shifted. The moment I left my body, I didn't fall or float upward in a straight line. It was more like being carried, like drifting on invisible water made of light. I looked down and saw the cabin frozen, every person still mid-motion. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. A photograph of life suspended. I could even see tiny details like the condensation on a passenger's coffee lid. And then all sound vanished. The engines, the chatter, the hum, gone. What replaced it was silence that felt alive. I whispered, "Where am I?" expecting no answer. But a voice replied, not from outside, but through me. It was calm, gentle, familiar. "You're safe, Sarah." I remember thinking, safe? I'm 30,000 feet in the air. But I wasn't falling. I wasn't even breathing. I was being held by something unseen but intelligent. Then clouds around the plane began to glow. Not white, but gold, like sunlight woven with memory. The light pulled me outward, away from the aircraft, and into what looked like endless sky. Yet this sky wasn't empty. It shimmered like a living tapestry. I called out again, "Am I dying?" The same voice answered, "You are returning." That sentence, it didn't scare me. It explained everything. As I drifted higher, Earth became small beneath me, peaceful, glowing. I could see continents as if they were veins pulsing with light. And at the center of it all, I felt a warmth greater than the sun. Then I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Everything around me paused. The clouds, the light, even the wind, all became still, as if creation itself had taken a breath. I felt weightless, yet deeply grounded in something beyond comprehension. Then from the stillness, a radiance began to form, brighter than lightning but softer than sunrise. The light expanded until it filled everything. "Jesus," I whispered, barely able to speak. My spirit recognized him before my mind could. He smiled, not with lips, but with presence. The entire sky felt like it was smiling through him. "Sarah," he said, my name resonating like a melody. "You were not meant to fear the unknown. You were meant to understand it." I didn't feel judged. I felt known completely. Every memory, every thought, every mistake seen and loved all at once. "Why me?" I asked quietly. "Why show me this?" He extended his hand, and light streamed outward like living threads. "Because what you carry can heal others. You have served humanity in the hospital. Now you will serve from the heart." As he spoke, the sky around us began to shimmer again, this time revealing moving images. Cities, nations, people. Each soul carries influence, he said. But few realize that true leadership begins in the unseen. Then in the light, I saw a figure standing before a great crowd, calm, confident, familiar, Barack Obama. The vision paused there. Jesus looked at me with a gaze that penetrated time itself. You must see what will unfold, not as judgment, but as restoration. The sky pulsed once more, and I was pulled into a realm that felt like both memory and prophecy at once. As I moved with the light, it felt like crossing through layers of music, each one more profound than the last. I was aware of my movement, yet there was no effort. The clouds parted, and beyond them was not darkness but color. Colors that breathed, tones that carried wisdom. Jesus walked beside me, his presence steady, eternal. Every step he took caused ripples in the air like sound waves creating meaning. He said, "You have lived your life serving others from science, but now I will show you heaven's altitude, how nations rise and fall, not by power, but by prayer." We stopped before what looked like a vast canvas made of light. Upon it, I could see timelines, events, faces, decisions. Every soul contributed to this living picture. Each person, he explained, is a thread. When they remember love, the pattern shines. When they forget, it fades, yet grace always weaves them back. He waved his hand and a new vision appeared, the United States glowing like a heartbeat. Then a name formed across it, Barack Obama. I felt a rush of emotion, curiosity, confusion, awe. His influence, Jesus said, was never about position. It was about preparation. I saw images of people inspired, divided, healed, all rippling from one life. But in 2026, he continued, a moment will come when the voice of unity must speak again, and through him, many will remember that wisdom and humility are brothers. The light dimmed, and he looked at me with compassion that could move mountains. "Sarah," he said, "you must tell them, hope is not ending, it is returning." And with that, the realm began to expand again, revealing the vision of nations. The place Jesus led me into next felt unlike anything I'd ever known. It wasn't heaven as I'd imagined it, clouds and harps, but a vast stillness that felt alive. The very air shimmered with awareness, as if creation itself was listening. There were no walls, no horizon, just a gentle radiance stretching endlessly. I whispered, "Where am I?" Jesus replied, "You are in the space between understanding and revelation where souls remember." The words vibrated through me rather than in my ears. Everything here was communication beyond sound. I could feel truth, not hear it. Around us floated shapes, soft orbs of light. I somehow knew they were souls resting or learning. Each glowed at its own rhythm, pulsing like heartbeats of peace. Then Jesus looked upward, and light streamed in from beyond the stillness, brighter, deeper. "From here all decisions flow," he said. "It is where the intentions of nations are born." I asked, "Do you mean every choice we make is seen from here?" He nodded, "Even the smallest ones." A word of kindness shifts the direction of entire generations. What leaders forget is that the unseen moves the scene. The realm began to hum and images formed, waves of people praying, arguing, hoping. The sound wasn't chaos, it was humanity searching for meaning. "Watch closely," Jesus said, "for in this harmony and conflict lies the preparation for what will unfold." Then, a specific date began to glow with a soft, pulsing violet light. November 3rd, 2026. I saw millions of people across America walking toward polling stations. But the atmosphere wasn't charged with the usual electricity of anger or anxiety. Instead, there was a profound, heavy silence, a collective holding of breath. I saw people in long lines reaching out to steady one another, sharing water, and speaking in low, respectful tones. Jesus gestured toward the vision of that day. "On this date," he said, "the world will look for a winner, but heaven will look for a witness. It is the day the heart of the nation decides if it prefers the mirror of its own pride or the window into another's soul." I saw Barack Obama again on that day, not as a candidate on a ballot, but as a steadying presence in the background. His words from weeks prior acting like a cooling rain over a parched land. His influence on November 3rd wasn't about a party victory. It was about the victory of the human spirit over the impulse to divide. The vision showed that the outcome of the day was less about the names on paper and more about the prayer in the people's hearts as they cast their choices. The moment his name appeared, the light surrounding me intensified until it was almost liquid, shimmering gold, moving through air like water. I wasn't blinded, I was enlightened. The energy carried understanding straight into my spirit. Jesus stood within it, radiant and calm. "What you are seeing," he said, "is not about politics. It is about patterns, how influence travels through time." I watched as the golden light rippled outward, forming pathways between nations, communities, and hearts. Each beam represented inspiration, hope, or leadership rooted in service. But then certain pathways began to flicker, where division, pride, or misunderstanding dimmed the light. Jesus reached out and touched one of the fading lines, and instantly it reignited stronger than before. He turned to me. When love returns to purpose, even what is misunderstood becomes redeemed. Suddenly, an image formed within the light, Barack Obama standing in front of a vast crowd. The energy around him was mixed: admiration, confusion, criticism, love. Yet through it all, I could sense one thing clearly: his influence was not finished. In 2026, Jesus said, a moment will come when his words will heal what arguments could not. He will not return to lead by title, but by reminder, to remind the world that dignity must return to dialogue. I stared in silence as the light expanded into cities, schools, homes, people listening, not debating. The power wasn't in politics anymore. It was in compassion reborn. Jesus smiled gently. What begins in one man's voice will echo through many hearts. That is the true rebirth of leadership. As the light calmed, Jesus turned to me again, closer now, as if he stood both in front of me and inside my heart. He said my name with such intimacy that it felt like it was being spoken by the universe itself. Sarah, he whispered, you were chosen to see this because your heart understands service. I felt tears form instantly. But I'm just a doctor. Why show me things meant for the world? He smiled. Because humility hears heaven best. Then his expression grew thoughtful, and I felt time around us bend. I could see the years ahead like pages turning in a living book. 2026 will not be a year of chaos, he said softly, but of choice. The loud will fade, the listening will rise. Images appeared, people gathering in small circles, praying quietly, journalists writing stories that healed rather than divided, children learning empathy before ambition. And there again, I saw Obama, older, reflective, yet carrying a light that wasn't his own. He will remind them, Jesus said, that true influence is not about being seen, but about seeing others. Then he looked back at me, his eyes kind but piercing. Do not let this message become about a man. It is about the return of conscience. My heart swelled with understanding. I nodded through tears. I'll tell them. The stillness deepened. Even my thoughts became quiet. Jesus placed his hand over my heart and said, then carry this peace with you because the world will need it soon. The next vision unfolded like dawn breaking over the planet. I saw Earth suspended in light, spinning slowly, each continent glowing with its own hue. Africa deep gold, Asia bright jade, America pulsing amber and white. Lines of light connected them all. Thoughts, prayers, inventions, art. Humanity looked like a vast web of creativity powered by spirit. Jesus raised his hand, and suddenly I could see the energy of leadership moving through this network from one generation to the next. The greatest leaders weren't necessarily the loudest. They were the ones who carried humility like oxygen. Then I saw America again. The light flickered where confusion and division still lingered, but new sparks began to appear, people awakening to something higher than ideology. Jesus said, the world will always need leaders, but in 2026, the world will remember that leadership begins in listening. Barack Obama appeared again, not speaking, but standing among everyday people listening. And everywhere he went, the light grew steadier. He is a symbol, Jesus continued, not of perfection, but of possibility, of how grace can move through any vessel that remembers empathy. The vision widened. I saw other leaders watching, learning, reflecting, hearts softening, egos lowering. It was as if one act of humility created a wave that rippled through every continent. Jesus turned to me once more. Tell them that unity is not agreement, it is alignment. What is coming will not divide the faithful, it will awaken them. And as he spoke, the earth glowed brighter than before, not from power, but from prayer. The vision began to fade into silence, but I could feel the message engraving itself into my soul. I knew the revelation had only begun. The light dimmed into a soft golden haze, and below us, I could see America breathing. Literally breathing. Cities pulse like a heartbeat. Every prayer, every conversation, every act of kindness or cruelty sent tiny ripples through that living map. Jesus pointed toward it. This nation, he said, was built on vision, not perfection. Its strength has always come from those who pray when no one's watching. I could see those prayers, thin streams of light rising from small towns, hospitals, schools, living rooms. The brightest ones didn't come from churches or politicians, but from ordinary people whispering, "Help us love again." As I watched, I realized something profound. The light dimmed not where people disagreed, but where they forgot to forgive. Jesus' eyes reflected the entire continent. "America does not suffer from darkness," he said. "She suffers from disconnection. Her light returns when her people remember they are one body." Then I saw Barack Obama walking quietly through a crowd, not as a leader on a stage, but as a listener among citizens. Wherever he paused, the light around him brightened. Jesus said softly, "In 2026, his purpose will not be to lead, but to remind, to restore the rhythm of unity." I asked, "But how?" He smiled faintly. "Through words carried by peace, not power. His message will not demand attention, it will deserve it." The light expanded again, spreading through mountains, rivers, cities. America's heartbeat grew louder, steadier, stronger. And for the first time, I understood. The destiny of a nation isn't written in speeches, but in the quiet pulse of compassion that beats beneath it. The golden light turned into what looked like a tapestry woven of thoughts and choices. Each thread shimmered differently, some bright, others faint. Jesus touched one thread, and instantly the name Barack Obama illuminated across the fabric, pulsing like a beacon. I looked closer and saw scenes from his past, moments of triumph, reflection, struggle. But unlike human history, this version wasn't judgmental. It was redemptive. Each flaw carried the potential for wisdom. Each criticism became a chance for grace. Jesus said, "Influence does not end when applause fades. It continues through those who remember the message more than the man." Then the tapestry began to shift, showing the year 2026 glowing in blue light. Obama stood once again, not in office, not in campaign mode, but in dialogue. I saw him speaking about unity, compassion, and leadership rooted in humility. Crowds gathered, not out of politics, but hunger for clarity. Around him, people from opposing sides stood shoulder to shoulder, listening quietly. Jesus said, "He will speak not as a ruler, but as a reconciler. For the world will realize by then that eloquence without empathy leads nowhere." I asked, "Will people believe him again?" Jesus replied, "Some will, some won't, but that is not the measure of success. The light does not argue, it reveals." The tapestry folded into itself and the name faded, yet the vibration of that moment remained in my spirit like a truth too deep to forget. In that silence, I finally understood Jesus wasn't showing me politics. He was showing me purpose. The vision changed again. Before us appeared two roads stretching across the earth. One shimmered with gold, warm and inviting. The other was gray, cold, and full of mirrors reflecting confusion. Jesus said, "These are not paths of fate. They are choices." On the golden road, I saw people of all colors, faiths, and beliefs working together, creating, forgiving, rebuilding. On the gray path, I saw arguments without listening, ambition without heart, progress without soul. Both roads led into the same year, 2026. But their destinations were vastly different. I turned to Jesus. "Which one will humanity take?" He looked at me with eyes that held both love and sorrow. "That depends on what they remember." I watched Barack Obama standing between both roads, looking conflicted but deeply aware. A light from heaven rested over his shoulders, not crowning him, but reminding him. "He will be a voice during the choosing," Jesus said. Not to command, but to caution. I saw him urging people toward reconciliation, calling for empathy, understanding, patience. Around him, others began to echo his tone. The gray road started to fade where compassion spread. Jesus continued, 2026 will test more than governments. It will test gratitude. The world must decide whether to chase power or protect peace. Then he placed his hand over my shoulder. "Tell them, the golden road is not distant. It is within reach every time one person chooses love over pride." As the two roads began to blur into one, I realized the prophecy wasn't about prediction. It was an invitation. I found myself standing over a great city bathed in twilight. The buildings glowed faintly as if waiting for dawn. People walked the streets, their faces weary yet hopeful. I could feel their longing, not for wealth or fame, but for understanding. Jesus stood beside me, looking at them with indescribable tenderness. "This is what heaven watches most closely," he said. "Not who wins debates, but who listens long enough to heal." Then, as if in answer to that longing, a wind of light swept across the city. It didn't destroy, it restored. People who had stopped speaking to each other began to reconnect. Enemies forgave without knowing why. News anchors, leaders, and influencers began speaking slower, more thoughtfully, less certain of their opinions, and more curious about truth. And there once again I saw Barack Obama sitting quietly at a round table, surrounded by young leaders. His tone was calm, fatherly, wise. He wasn't preaching, he was guiding. Jesus said softly, "Every generation needs a bridge. In 2026, he will remind them how to cross." The light expanded outward from that moment, touching cities across continents. Paris, Nairobi, Tokyo, Sydney, carrying the same vibration. "Reconciliation," I whispered. "Lord, this feels like healing." He nodded. "It is, but healing is not the end. It is preparation." I understood then that 2026 wouldn't bring perfection. It would bring remembering, a moment when the world pauses, exhales, and begins again. And when I looked back toward that city, it was brighter than before. Not because everything was fixed, but because love had returned to the conversation. Jesus turned to me one last time and said, "Hearts turn first, nations follow later." The air shimmered. I could feel Earth itself beginning to breathe again. As the light from the nation settled, I found myself standing in a circular space filled with gentle radiance. There were no walls, no chairs, just energy that felt like peace taking form. In the center stood Jesus. Around him were figures of light, souls that once walked Earth. I recognized none by face, but I knew they were leaders, thinkers, healers from ages past. "This," Jesus said, "is the circle of counsel. Every decision that shapes humanity is whispered through this harmony." Each light pulsed with wisdom, not dominance. They didn't speak words, but intentions: unity, mercy, courage. These vibrations rippled outward, influencing hearts across generations. I watched one thread of light move directly toward Earth and touch Barack Obama's timeline. It brightened as if inspiration had been reignited. Jesus looked at me. He will feel the call again, not to rule, but to remind. Through humility, he will speak with authority greater than office. Then he motioned toward other glowing figures. I felt their essence, women and men of compassion emerging all over the world. Some unknown, others once overlooked. "They are the new counselors," Jesus said. "The age of the loud is ending. The age of the listening has begun." Every light hummed in resonance, forming a melody that felt both ancient and new. As I stood there, I realized this. The circle was not exclusive. Every person who chooses empathy over ego becomes part of it. Jesus smiled knowingly. Heaven's counsel always includes those who choose love in silence. The vision changed again. I was now looking down at Earth, where I saw ordinary people standing between two opposing crowds. They held no signs, made no speeches. They just reached out their hands, one side to the other. Jesus said, "These are the bridge builders. They appear when division has gone too far." I could see teachers calming arguments in classrooms, doctors praying silently before surgeries, artists using their work to connect souls instead of provoke reaction. The bridges weren't physical, they were energetic, glowing paths of light stretching across differences. In the middle of this network stood Barack Obama once more, but this time he was not the focus. He was among them, smiling quietly, guiding rather than leading. In 2026, Jesus explained, he will step forward not as an icon, but as an equal. His example will inspire those who thought they had no influence. True leadership doesn't shout. It listens, then builds. I saw these bridges multiply until they circled the globe. The entire planet seemed stitched together by compassion. Then Jesus said something that made my heart ache with both beauty and urgency. If the world forgets how to listen, heaven sends bridge builders. But if the world remembers, those bridges become highways of healing. The bridges began to glow brighter until they merged into one enormous ring of light encircling the earth. It pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. Jesus looked at me and whispered, "Tell them, connection is the cure." The next moment, the entire vision dissolved into white light. Jesus and I stood within it, but now the light carried sound. Millions of voices praying, asking, debating, pleading. He raised his hand and all the noise softened to a single tone. "Clarity. Sarah," he said. "Leadership was never about titles. It was always about trust. Humanity forgets that the greatest power lies not in control, but in care." He showed me images of leaders through history, kneeling in quiet rooms, seeking guidance in solitude. Those moments, he said, changed more destiny than any public speech. Then Barack Obama appeared again, sitting at a desk by candlelight, reflecting. Jesus spoke softly. He will be reminded that legacy is not carved in marble, it's written in mercy. His next chapter will not be of power, but of peace. I saw him encouraging others, mentoring quietly, sowing reconciliation across communities. Jesus continued, when a leader remembers who gave them their voice, their words begin to heal again. I felt a deep conviction rise inside me. Lord, how do we know who to follow? He smiled. Follow the ones who make you love, not fear. The light pulsed once more. 2026 will reveal that truth louder than politics ever could. Then he looked deeply into me. Tell them, Sarah, the world doesn't need new rulers. It needs new reminders. His words sank into me like fire and peace combined. The light around us began to swirl faster, as if time itself were gathering me back. I felt a gentle tug on my spirit pulling me downward, not against my will, but like returning from a deep breath. I looked at Jesus one last time. His expression carried both peace and purpose. It's time, he said. But remember, prophecy is not about predicting the future, it's about preparing hearts. I nodded, though my spirit hesitated. Will they believe me? He smiled with that same eternal calm. You're not sent to convince, you're sent to remind. As he lifted his hand, a single ray of golden light descended, touching my chest. Take this peace with you, he said. When you speak, they will feel it, even if they don't understand it. The realm began to dissolve. I could hear faint sounds, machines beeping, voices calling my name. My body felt heavy again, anchored by gravity, but my soul still vibrated with what I had seen. Just before the light vanished completely, Jesus said, in 2026, they will learn that the greatest prophecy is love lived out loud. And then breath returned. My eyes opened to the sterile glow of hospital lights. A nurse gasped, "She's awake!" Tears streamed down my face, not from pain, but from gratitude. I whispered, "I saw him." No one spoke. They just stared. I smiled through trembling lips and whispered again. He said, "Hope is returning." And deep within me, I knew this was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. When I opened my eyes, the world felt both familiar and foreign. The ceiling lights glowed softer than before, almost golden, and the rhythmic beeping of machines sounded like distant music. I realized I was in a hospital. My body felt heavy, but my heart light as air. A nurse leaned over me, tears in her eyes. "Sarah, we thought we lost you." I smiled weakly and whispered, "No, I was found." They didn't understand, but they could feel it. Something had shifted in the room. Even the air seemed warmer, calmer. I could sense a gentle presence still lingering, as if heaven had followed me back for a moment to make sure I was safe. Over the next few hours, doctors checked every vital sign, each one shaking their head in disbelief. "She shouldn't be this stable," one said quietly. But I knew the reason. I wasn't the same woman who'd left her body midair. I carried something sacred now, not information, but revelation. When I was finally alone, I closed my eyes and whispered, "I remember, Jesus. I'll tell them." And instantly, I saw flashes of the vision again. Barack Obama, the golden bridges, the light flowing through nations, the year 2026 shimmering like dawn. It wasn't fear that filled me. It was clarity. I realized my mission wasn't to prove anything. It was to prepare hearts, to remind people that God still speaks through the unexpected, still calls through ordinary lives. The next morning, as sunlight spilled across my blanket, I promised quietly, I'll share what I saw. Even if just one heart listens, it will be enough. It's been 2 years since that flight, but sometimes when I close my eyes, I still hear the hum of that other realm, that living stillness where truth breathes. Life hasn't returned to normal, but I no longer want normal. I live slower now, more intentional, more aware of every heartbeat. I tell my story when people ask, and even when they don't. Not to convince, but to remind. Because what I saw wasn't about politics, death, or miracles. It was about awakening. That leadership and love are not opposites, but reflections of the same light. When I think of 2026, I don't think of predictions. I think of possibility. I think of Jesus' words echoing inside me. The greatest prophecy is love lived out loud. I've met skeptics, believers, and those somewhere in between. I never argue. I just tell them he was real. The light was real. And what he showed me was hope. Sometimes when I'm alone, I write letters to people I'll never meet, to the young woman doubting her worth, the leader questioning his path, the believer losing patience with the world. I tell them what Jesus told me. Heaven's greatest message isn't coming. It's already here inside your heart. That's how I live now, quietly, but on purpose. My name is Sarah Taylor. I was a doctor who crossed into light and returned with peace. Jesus didn't send me back to predict the future. He sent me to remind the world that compassion is its only true direction. And if you're hearing this, maybe you were meant to. Maybe you too are a bridge, a builder of light in a world still learning to see. Because love never ends.